is so power, and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it. So then when you see what Dr. Francis C. Welsing talked about is that fear and
Just genetic
that
annihilation.
deficiency of when you have a person that has the lack of pigment, the
Right.
lack of melanin,
Right.
that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That melanin comes with compassion.
Welcome to Talk Flicks with Boss Chicks. I'm your host, Crystal, and today, I don't think we was ready for the cannon that Nick Canon fired on us with this garbage. So let's go ahead and get into it. Today we're going to be joined by Marcia Jennings with her Howard and UT apparel on, showing that she is cultured. But let's go ahead and get into this because this was something that kind of came out of nowhere, because this episode actually was filmed like almost a month ago. And so for it to just now be kind of like, I guess because of the whole firing, I guess the firing is what kind of spurred this to kind of come back up again. But let's just take a look at what he actually said. So he said, and again, I do encourage people to watch the entire video because I think context is good. Even though I don't agree with what he's saying, I think that it helps me to understand how he ended up saying what he was saying, like what the context was before and after. So he says the people that don't have melanin. First of all, he started this segment saying, "Let me be careful." And he completely did not be careful. Like he completely just created a disaster for himself. It says the people that don't have melanin are a little less. When they were sent to the mountains of Caucasus, the sun started to deteriorate them. So then they acted out of fear. They're acting out of low self-esteem. They're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil. They have to rob, steal, rape, kill in order to survive. So then these people that didn't have what we have, the people with melanin, they had to be savages. They're acting as animals. So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages. So Marcia, when you first saw this, what were your thoughts?
Wow, I can't focus on nothing that's happening. Okay, being a graduate of two schools that have long-winded people, it has become an unfortunate truth that once you kind of hear someone go down a certain path and you kind of already know where they're going, you slightly tune them out, which was the case with this video that was over an hour and some change. Just want to put that out.
Hour and 30 minutes. But
Right.
skip about 47 minutes in, you'll kind of, from 47 on, then I think it makes a little bit more sense. But go ahead.
Right. So that was my original first thought. This is a whole lot of talking and kind of it was almost like he, of course, his class is a class. It was almost kind of like he was teaching himself. It was more of like, I know my history now. Let me show you that I know my history. So that's what it felt like for me. It kind of just felt like hey, you guys, I found out my history. Here's a lesson for you. And then it kind of got off track. So like you said, his first thing being like, let me be careful. I feel like a lot of times with these conversations, you shouldn't even really give that warning because it's hard to be careful when you're talking about sensitive topics?
I think you can be careful, but I think he really needed to kind of almost like draft out his thoughts before he actually started saying what he was saying. Because he was trying to get to a point that I think history does support, but it was like, it wasn't, it was done very uncarefully, is basically what it was. And in fact, he tried to preface his comments with that was the most ridiculous thing, because like it is leading to a whole disaster. Like when you tread carefully, like you're trying to avoid that, and like he completely created this kind of shitstorm that is coming out.
I don't think that necessarily having, like, you're trying to tiptoe is helpful. I would prefer if you came out, I would prefer if you just came out and said what you said, stand behind what you said, and don't try to cower away. Like, it's people are going to disagree with you either way. That's just a fact of life.
I think if he had of maybe, because like this whole thing when he's talking about the melanated people, you know, with the sun and the mountains, like I think he was going beyond the history that people are usually accustomed to knowing. So I think he needed to start with, okay, you know, we saw how, you know, Europeans came over here and took the lands from Native American, and just kind of give a little bit more kind of like contextual things that people understand before going into that. And again, I don't really agree. I think it was kind of like the way it was worded, people will take that as being kind of like a general, like sweeping assumption of all people without melanin. And so it needed to be carefully kind of compartmentalized, where it's like, we're not talking about all, you know, white people or the people even today. Like it just needed to be, the context needed to be set, the groundwork needed to be set first before you come with such inflammatory type of comments, because it was just too much. And then like later on in that interview, he kind of gives that context. Well, you know how, you know, when the Europeans came over and they colonized the lands and took the stuff from the Native Americans. This is history that we all kind of know. So if you kind of had to start off with that, and then kind of with some of those antidotes, it could have maybe, I don't know. I just feel like timing is everything, and everybody just keeps to see, like they keep saying and doing stuff in a time that, like, I feel like racial tensions are so high. Everybody is super uber sensitive. And so like, if you're trying to further the cause of, you know, these movements and things like that, you have to be aware of the times and how you're saying things, and even why you're even saying it at all. Is it the right time? And like, I feel like it just was not, it was not the right time for this.
I firmly believe that any kind of change has to come with something that's radical as well as the peaceful side. And I think it's unrealistic for people to assume that everything that's going to come out, if it's peaceful, will get that change that we're looking for. Disagree, completely disagree. Because it's too much of, you know, I want to say this right, I want to not be, and then people miss the message because all they can see is a smiling face, and they may not take it seriously because of what you're saying or how you're saying it. So it's oil and water. Like we need both as much as, you know, we're trying. Some people are trying to keep the peace. We need someone to also rattle the bag, because I feel like a lot of our history is we're trying to keep the peace, and we saw how well that worked out. So maybe it's time to let me go ahead and just press forward. And in our past, we've seen the moments where we have rattled the bag and changes have been made. No, we may not think that the changes were enough at that time, but the fact that it was still a change to some degree, even if it was still like, but it's still kind of going on, or they changed it and it's still underneath at the core, it's still the same thing, but they changed something on the outside, it's still a change. And in order to make that change, you need something that's going to rock the table, and then something that's going to kind of come in and smooth it away.
So do you think that Nick should apologize? Because like he kind of gave a statement that was more like, he said he takes responsibility of it, and he's, if anybody who knows him knows he doesn't have a hate in his heart. So is that considered apology, and does he need to apologize?
I believe which he clearly found, he decided or he felt like he needed to apologize. As long as the person, any person that makes a statement that's counter to what the overall believe or what the majority believe, whatever. When you apologize, just be honest about it. Like, did he need to make a statement? If he really felt in his heart that he was trying to communicate a different message than what was interpreted, and he feels like, okay, maybe I need to apologize for how I said it, because this is what I mean, but at the core, this is still the belief, then of course. And I guess he felt that because he gave the apology. But if he had felt that the way he communicated was the way he wanted the actual information to be taken, then no, he did need to apologize. I said what I said. I said it how I wanted to say it. If you agree with me, great. If you don't, great. Either way, you can voice your opinion, you can debate me, you can leave comments, you can do reaction videos. We're going to talk about it, but I said what I said.
Going back to what I said before, like, I think, I personally don't agree with a lot of stuff that he was saying, but I think that, again, you have to kind of give people the context up front. And that was something that a lot of people had said about Deshaun Jackson, who's a football player, a black football player that plays for the Eagles, where he kind of came out. Well, he tweeted something that said, it said at the beginning, it said Hitler said, and it basically went on to say that, like, black people were the real Jews, and that, the people who are non-melanated, as Nick says, that are calling themselves Jews are not the real Jews, and they're gonna, extort the lands and stuff like that to keep their secret, or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And I think that, people were saying, like, even though people may agree with what you're saying, and the quote he gave went on to say other things, like, black people have a great power, and they need to recognize their power because it's just something that is very important. And I think when people see just that first part, Hitler, or people hear that first part where it's like, oh, these non-melanated people are less, or a little less than, or something like that. Like, when you start off with stuff like that, it is going to automatically, people are going to be defensive. They're going to be angry. So everything else you say after that, even if it's something that they kind of agree with, or it's not as offensive, they are not going to be on board with. So, like, people, especially celebrities, like, I almost feel like these people need to be given almost like courses about stuff like this. This, like, they should have a PR person, like, kind of helping guide them in certain ways. Like, hey, you need to know this. So, when you're out there talking to people, like, be aware of the repercussions. You know what I mean? Like, if he is like, yeah, I don't really care, this is what I feel, I don't care if I get fired or whatever, then that's something different. But I'm sure he wasn't thinking he was going to get fired, because actually in that same interview, I think he had said something like, yeah, I can't even believe I could say stuff like this and not get fired. But this was before he had actually said, the comments that everyone's upset about. And so it's like, yes, they will fire you or whatever, you know what I mean? So you just have to be aware of these things, aware of the consequences. Don't be upset.
The art of persuasion is what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But once you first have to determine your intent. Is your intent to actually persuade people to your side, or is your intent just to put the information out there? Because like you said, if you are not concerned with actually persuading people to your side, but you just want to state facts, then you can say it like that. Just like the football player you were referencing when he was like, as Hitler said, right, but Hitler said it. And I think a lot of times when we start to listen to different speakers and we take quotes from them or pieces of their conversations, we, like you said, we don't think about context, but we also don't look at their full character. We look at what they're most known for. So of course, Hitler, everyone that I know at least, If some of y'all that I do know are in love with Hitler, please let me know. But everyone I'm aware of is like, nah, bruh, Hitler is not the move. However, I did read this book about Hitler, and it was talking about, basically he was a great persuader. It was talking about, you know, what kind of mindset you have to have, some of the things he did before he even got to the point of being able to persuade an entire country, some of the steps he took, and it was very insightful. It spoke of determination. And these aren't words that we like to attach to people that we consider villains, but it's true. It speaks of the analytical mind. It speaks of the art persuasion. These are usually positive characteristics, but we still have to acknowledge that this person had both. They had great evil because what they chose to do with their knowledge and their power is something that was evil. So Nick Canon, whether you agree or disagree with him, if his intent was to persuade, I agree with you. He did horrible. If his intent was just to state the fact, he stated the fact. Or the fact as he knows it. Because, you know, we don't know everything. We can only infer and all of that goodness. Nick Canon, I don't like discrediting people and being like, oh, they're not qualified to talk about this topic. I don't think that's the case at all. I think everyone deserves an opinion, even if I think it's reckless. But I do wish that more people would be comfortable being like, I don't really know everything about it. And that's kind of when we start to tag team panels. Because personally, I don't know enough. I don't even know enough about what Nick Canon is speaking on to be like, oh yeah, and this is where he went wrong, and this is
exactly that whole story about you know, the non-melanated people being on the mountains and then all this stuff. It's like, okay, can you give us the sources of where you found this information? Because like, I feel like that's something that it's you know, I guess one of those maybe hidden things in history, if it's, you know, valid or whatever. And
right.
so I think everybody who does like these little shows or whatever, like, you have to assume that your audience knows nothing about this topic that you're talking about. And I think if people would approach these, you know, speeches or whatever they give with that mentality, okay, these people don't really know what I'm talking about, you know, they're asleep or whatever. You know, there was a lot of in that video, a lot about being asleep and being woke and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, well, you're telling people that they're asleep, but then you're talking to them as if they're woke. So what are you doing? Like, you're kind of, you know what I'm saying, causing confusion and distorting the message, because again, you're not giving the context, you're not giving your sources. And I mean, especially in this day and age of fake news, like, nobody believes hardly everything people can say is fake news. Blah, blah, blah. Like, you have to give your sources when you are coming, especially with stuff that's kind of controversial like that. Like, you just can't get away with it.
Right. It would have been awesome. In a college essay or a college paper, you would not be able to get away with not citing your sources. But I feel like the audience as well is at fault. So yes, of course, we're watching.
What do you mean the audience is at fault for not knowing?
The audience is at fault for also not doing additional research. So, because it's common, people watch something, people read something, they don't do further research, or if they just watch them, they may not do any kind of research. They just take what that person says and like, yes, goes off. But it's still the responsibility of the audience to fact check him, especially if he's given information that he didn't provide a source himself. So if people in the comments were like, right, where did you get this from? Because I found this. I feel like that is a better conversation, or at least it furthers the actual discussion platform, and then he can go off on different things of what they said. I think that would have been a great outcome. But it's still, I feel like responsibility lies with the person who has the actual platform and is putting out the content, but also with the audience to be diligent enough to also go and do their own research. Because it's kind of the same thing, at least that I have witnessed with people who study the Bible, or Christians or whatever. They kind of just listen to what their pastor or whoever said this, but they actually don't move beyond just like that point of hearing it.
His statements, people keep, like when you had first sent me the article about it, it's like, oh, these anti-Semitic comments and statements. And then when I start reading and then watching the whole thing in context, I'm like, is this anti-Semitic, or is this just him saying that these people, that we're the actual Jews? Like, to me, that's not necessarily being anti-Semitic, because like you're saying, no, actually we're the ones, like, you can't, if you're saying we're the Jews, then it's not that you hate Jews, which is what anti-Semitism is. And so like I actually had to go, I'm like, well, maybe because this is the same thing that happened with Deshaun Jackson, the football player I was telling you about. And they were like, oh, these anti-Semitic, statements and and I'm like, okay, I kind of am not seeing the anti-Semitism. It can be offensive,
right?
But like, I'm not seeing this where it's literally like the definition is hostility, prejudice, or discrimination against Jews. I wasn't seeing that in neither one of these comments.
Right.
So I'm not sure. Did you feel like they were anti-Semitic or what?
No. Cause right, like you said, it's not like he was hating them. He wasn't saying that, oh, I can't stand these people. He was just saying y'all aren't the real Jews they're referring to. So if anything, if he's saying people with melanin are the real Jews, the people that hate the people with melanin, y'all sound like y'all may be a little
right. So he was really the anti-Semite, right?
Right. Like based on his deduction, y'all getting upset. Y'all, why y'all doing this?
I mean, we know that Jesus was a man of color. Like the description is there in the Bible. We know this. But we cannot say for certain that, the people who are lighter complected are not Jews, either, just because of just the mixing of races throughout time. You know what I mean? Like some generations get lighter, some get darker. Like you can't really say like, oh, we're the real Jews. You can say we're also, maybe part of that that heritage or something like that. But I feel like because this stuff is not verifiable, you can't just be like, oh no, we're the real Jews. You're not even Jews. Like, I just feel like that's ridiculous.
Oh, that's a whole topic.
That's a whole topic, right? And he kind of hints at the whole, like, because I was like, what is this? The genetic annihilation. Where it was like he was saying that the non-melanated people were I guess stealing and taking and raping these other cultures that were more melanated because they feared that they would be wiped out. And I have read books about stuff like this that could, I guess, give people context as to why Europeans were coming over and trying to colonize everybody. But I forgot where I was actually going with this. It just went out my head. But I think, again, he needed to kind of set the stage. And that's really how he could have treaded carefully, was just setting the stage with current events, things that people already are familiar with, to say whatever he was going to say. But again, my whole thing is like, I believe that, yes, there are people who look like me and you who are of, the Jewish descent or heritage or bloodline. But, the sad part is we don't really know for sure, because of the fact that, when our ancestors were brought over here, like that whole knowledge of, where they came from was kind of lost.
Right.
So,
and I know that this is the focus, this comment that he said, but I also, and this is a very sad thing that I'm about to say, I was also a little bit sad about losing Wild 'N Out. Like when he was going over how he built it, because I grew up with Nick Canon. So even though we didn't have like cable and stuff, we still managed to see some of Nick Canon's work. So he really has grown up on television, and we've seen the work that he's put out.
If people, and that's the thing, I mean, a lot of these companies are ran by people who are, Jewish. And so when you and I think people like Nick Cannon too have been a part of this whole cancel culture. You know, you say one bad thing, cut, you're fired, you're out of here. And I think while sometimes we're like, yeah, I'm glad that person got, fired or whatever, like that whole culture of canceling, like it will start to get out of control. Like there is, this thing called freedom of speech. Like you can't just be canceling everybody without it starting to have that ripple effect where people that you don't want to be canceled end up getting canceled too, because people always want to kind of hold a bit of a double standard.
It is crazy. Even though sometimes I'll be like, they probably deserve to be canceled. But at the same time, it is sad because it doesn't show forgiveness and growth. I was watching this episode of BoJack Horseman, and it was kind of talking about cancel culture, but basically what the agent told their client to do, they were like, just wait a few years, then come back around. So I say that to say that even though cancel culture is crazy, the internet's memory, so not of course that everything lives on the internet, it'll be there forever, but the people's memory is pretty short. So I feel like people who are canceled, like if they give it enough time, it will come back around, unless you just do something that is so atrocious that's like, we will tattoo this on your head forever. You give it enough time, canceled people will probably eventually come back around.
Was he wrong in regards to the specific chunk that people have kind of ripped out of this interview to kind of vilify him? Was he wrong in saying those things?
And saying his beliefs? No. He was not wrong in telling us what he believed. And I'm not saying whether I believe that or not. I am saying I do not know because I have not researched that. I can't form an opinion when I haven't taken the time to be like, oh, let me find out. He could be completely correct. History and everything could support his point. And if anyone does decide one day to actually go back, or they may have already done so, I don't know because I didn't look it up. But if someone does and they come back and be like, Nick Canon was correct, I'm gonna be like, that look at God, look at that. But at the same time, can I trust you? Because I still didn't do this research. So was he wrong in stating his belief? He was not.
Yeah, I don't think he's wrong in stating his belief. I think what he was wrong was assuming that people understood what he was trying to say as far as his beliefs. And again, people, and I think maybe it's because I'm a teacher, and so I deal with like people with different learning disabilities and different learning skills and just all these different things, and you kind of have to manage them all. But the best way to deal with that is to assume everybody is completely ignorant to what you are talking about. You have to come at it at that basic level and then work your way up. There's just no other way around it. And again, you have to be aware of the times we're in. You're saying, oh, these white people are not the real Jews. You already know that it's going to get you some backlash, or you should already know that. So you need to find a way to express those things. Because honestly, and I've seen people do this, like you literally can say anything, but it all depends on how you say it. You know what I'm saying? Like people, you could be insulting somebody, but the way you said it, they don't even really realize that it's an insult. You know what I'm saying? And so like, you just have to be mindful of those things, especially if you're a celebrity and we're living in this cancel culture, which
you saw, I don't know if you saw, Diddy was like, come to revolt. Like, we gonna take you in, brother. You should have been here. So now, Nick, if Nick decides to go with Diddy, he's bringing that hype that he got from this controversial situation over to Diddy. People are, of course, going to be tuning in because they're going to be like, what he got now? He said he's going to go do his own thing, something new. So in the long run, is this actually the better path for him? Who knows? We'll see.
Yep. We shall see. So that's our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you leave a comment. Let us know what you guys thought of this whole controversy with Nick Canon. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.